Guys, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of the Advisory Board podcast. Can't even get the name right. I've got with me a special guest, somebody I've known for several years now. And as you guys know, we try to focus every episode on something that's actionable and insightful. And Ron's a multi-brand franchisor founder. I met him when we were working together. He was the founder of a company called Two Maids A Mop, now rebranded to Two Maids. He successfully worked his way through that acquisition process with HFC, and then he's now the founder of Pink Zebra Moving. Now, a couple of things you got to know about Ron. He's a stand-up guy based in Birmingham. He's been married 13 years, has two kids, and he's got a good head on his shoulders. He likes to do things differently. So Ron, this Pink Zebra Moving Company, he's not only trying to disrupt the industry, but I agree with him. I think they're going to create a new category of service in this moving space, where this brand is going to provide a completely different customer experience at a new level, where people will choose them and look for them rather than just find someone who can help them move. So, Ron, before I bungle too much, tell us a little bit more about you. Tell us about this new venture that you're working on.
Sure, Dave. Thanks. Number one, thanks for having me on here. You're one of the good guys in franchising, so I'm excited to work with you and talk with you here today.
Thanks.
So Pink Zebra Moving, yeah, what you think. Number one, it's kind of a crazy loony type of moving company. It's the color pink kind of tells the tale there. We wanted to try to be as different from other moving brands as we could possibly be. And so we said nobody wants to be pink because everybody else is muscle, steroid based, and all these other kind of fun masculine things. And so we went the opposite of that, just to sort of tell the tale, like, hey, you're going to get something different when you hire Pink Zebra Moving. But we think, like you said, we're not just going to even disrupt this industry. We think we're going to change the industry and create a whole new category, what we call happy movers. I'll tell you more about that as we talk today. But we think we can do that by providing better, more positive customer experience. We think we can create engagement that's a lot different than what you typically experience as a consumer when working with a moving company.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And Ron, I'd love to, since you've built a brand. I mean, I forget how many units they have now, but Two Maids is over 100 units and a successfully growing brand. And you exited from that, and then you started this. Yeah, you mind maybe before we jump into a couple of topics, specifically, would you mind sharing a couple of thoughts? Like, what were some of the biggest challenges you had as you were growing that brand, and what were some of the biggest lessons you learned?
Yeah, so when I look at the two different opportunities that I'm in now, the Pink Zebra Moving versus Two Maids A Mop at the time, both are obviously in home services industries. Both are kind of ugly industries nobody really wants to be in. So there's a lot of common similarities. The big difference for me, at least, is I kind of know franchising now. Whereas Two Maids, I entered the residential cleaning industry first, and slowly, like literally over the course of 10 years, slowly found my way into this world of franchising. And so I had to learn everything by myself. The IFA was a great resource that helped a lot. I was able to connect with mentors that I met at IFA, and that helped a lot. But at the same time, real life happened, and I made a lot of mistakes. One of the biggest is just territories. People talk about that a lot. We were pretty bad early on. We didn't really know how to build, much less sell a territory. So one of our first territories was in the DC area. We sold all of metropolitan DC, which means not just DC, but parts of Maryland and most of Northern Virginia. So
Yeah.
we didn't know what we were doing wrong there. We thought it was right, and we learned pretty quickly later. We were fortunate to partner with a great franchise group there that ended up developing the entire area and still is doing amazing. So thankfully we got lucky there, but it could have went real south on us. And so that's one thing that we learned, just from a technical standpoint, like how to actually build a territory that's going to be good for us and for the franchisee. The other, we'll talk more about this if you want, because I could talk all day about this next part, is just how to train and support better. And it's when you think franchising, that's what you think, training and support. The early franchisees at Two Maids probably would say you don't know how to train and support, because we sort of let people sort of do it their own way early on, and we had to learn a hard lesson there that you got to have uniformity, obviously, but you also have to have some type of branding inside of everything you do. And so we sort of took for granted that people would be able to just sort of learn from us and then go take it and run. We didn't realize how much we had to actually hold their hand And so there was some learning and growing pains that came with that. So all of that stuff, here at Pink Zebra Moving, we've already lived that life, so we don't have to make those mistakes over again. So that's probably two big areas that we've really hopefully avoided some mistakes here.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you shared those, and thanks for most people that have exited in a way you have. They just want to beat chest rather than look back and reflect and say and be honest and say, we really kind of stunk at this. I'm grateful for you sharing that, Ron.
Yeah,
One thought I had is the support side of things. Um, you'd mentioned this, so I just wanted to highlight it because you didn't have uniform support. You guys had a lot of variability in performance, right? What did you
absolutely.
see? What did you see in the performance of your franchisees once you guys really started to invest in this, and you got a whole team on board that were supporting and training? And what started to happen to the consistency of performance across the system?
Yeah, it's a good question because it's actually a kind of an interesting answer. On the top end, you had very entrepreneurial personalities who
Mhm.
really didn't want that type of structure, and they thrived in that environment. One of our franchisees in Florida just kicked tail right out of the gate. And anytime we said, "Hey, let us help you," they were like, "Man, we need, we're doing it. You just stay out of my way." That was rare. On the other side, most everyone else needed some type of handholding, and
Mhm.
we really struggled with some of that because we were very entrepreneurial people ourselves. That's how we built the business. We built this business from a one store location in Florida, 250 square foot office space, into eventually a national brand with 100+ locations. And so that entrepreneurial spirit was inside me and everyone else inside the corporate office. And we just assumed others had that same feeling. We didn't know there were like a different way of thinking. We just thought how we thought was how everyone thought that started a business. So we had to learn how to not just provide them with tools and systems, but also how to coach and how to be a mentor to them as they were going through all the different phases that a franchisee goes through when they start a business. Like that first 2 or 3 months, more than likely you're like thinking, should I have done this? Did I make the right decision?
Mhm.
As an entrepreneur, that's never even once thought about quitting either of my two businesses, that was a foreign concept to me because quitting was never on the table. But for a new franchisee who's used to white collar America, it's scary. It's a little painful even. And so, yeah, those are normal, natural emotions that we had to figure out how to prepare people for. Because that whether you're in the worst or the best franchise model, most franchisees go through the same phases over time.
Yeah, no, you're right. But what you describe is the kind of the strata that exists in franchising, right? You've got all sorts of different variables and personalities, but you get those highly entrepreneurial folks. They don't want the support necessarily. They want the support for the operational minutia, but they don't want the training. They feel like, how is this regional person going to teach me anything I don't already know? Right?
Absolutely.
I've
Yeah.
seen that a bunch. And I know some of the guys, I could probably name names of people that are in that category from Two Maids, right? They're talented and they're growing, they're driving, they're innovating,
Yep.
almost at the same rate as the franchise system. And you want them, and yet it's hard to harness that and also keep it in check. But then you get the majority, right, of the folks are I don't know what to do next. I've never run a business.
Right.
I've been an accountant my whole life, so my P&L list is great, but my sales suck. Like they're usually great at one thing and they struggle with 4 or 5. And so yeah, it makes sense that's you need a good coaching system to find and support that.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever done this, but if you look up franchising in the dictionary, it says easy. That's the definition. But that's what people think. People think franchise easy. This easy. I got it all figured out because they got it all figured out. But it's not easy. It's never easy. It's always some level of hardness to build in a business, whether you have someone on the side helping you like us or not. It
Mhm.
obviously is easier, but easy is not the definition.
Not the right word. Yes, definitely not a synonym for franchising. I agree with
Right.
you. Hey, so, well, let's pivot. Thank you for sharing those. Those are great lessons learned. So now we talk about Pink Zebra. So you've had this experience, you've got all this knowledge. Now you're pouring it into a new brand, and I wanted to talk about a couple of things with you. Let's transfer that knowledge. So tell us a little bit about how did you take some of that knowledge you learned with Two Maids and infuse it into what you're doing with Pink Zebra?
Well, it's interesting. A lot of our vendors, not all of them, but a lot of our vendors at Two Maids sort of transferred over to Pink Zebra Moving. We have a long history with a lot of them and great relationships as a result. We've seen what type of work they produce. They're good to our franchisees at Two Maids, and they've so far been great for our franchisee here at Pink Zebra Moving. So a lot of those things are still very much a part of us. The training, the support, we even have some of the same personnel, very similar as well. We think we should get very deep, inside a business. Like our hands should be dirty, alongside of our franchisees. And so we're present physically, mentally. We're pretty open after we're there. I mean, right now we've got field reps who have 20, 30 years of professional moving experience. We're teaching them franchising. They're teaching us moving. They're out visiting some of our newly open franchisees that have only been open for a few weeks, because we like to go back after grand opening just to see how, what type of results are occurring 2-3 weeks later after that grand opening day or week. Mm-hmm. So all of that is very much a carbon copy of what we did at Two Maids. The big difference is obviously it's a different business. We're in the similar industry. Again, it's home services, but some pretty big differences. One, it's a male-dominated industry, whereas at Two Maids, it was female-dominated industry. So that by itself presents a lot of challenges. Second, we work Monday through Saturday here. Saturday's probably the busiest day of our week, whereas before we were working Monday through Friday. Why is that a big deal? Well, that means that we have to be present. In the old days, like 2 years ago, Saturday was literally a lazy boy day. Pick your feet up, watch some ball games. We're still going to, have our opportunities to be family members here, but we also understand there's a lot of revenue being earned on a Saturday. So that means we all here in the home office in Birmingham have to be present. We have to answer questions. We have to help people and support them. So there's some pretty big changes for us. And then the fact that it's just an industry, we walked into this industry because we sensed an opportunity from a consumer perspective. We didn't have any actual vocational experience inside this trade. So all of that from day one has been new to us. And so we at Two Maids A Mop, when we built that from nothing to something, I had 10 years of experience, professional working experience inside that industry before we ever opened our first franchise location. So we don't have the benefit of that here, which is good and bad. The good part is we get to sort of have a fresh perspective on it and not be jaded and say, no, that's not how you do it, because we've been doing this forever.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a superpower if you think about it. It's like when you hire a new person, that new hire is usually the smartest person in the company, because they can see the things that you're doing that are not normal, or maybe they want to question. Something I ask of any of our new hires is question everything. Honestly, I want them to really question everything. And so it puts you in a unique perspective where you can say, we don't need to do it that way anymore. Why?
Yeah. I mean, even when we first started, really checking this industry out, again, we had a negative customer experience locally in my family that prompted this whole self-discovery on what opportunities exist in this industry. Once I sort of said, we're going for it, let's enter that industry and see what we can do. We chose the color pink. We talked about that earlier, but what we wanted to do was really purchase a local moving company anywhere, even though we're in Birmingham, Alabama. We didn't care if it was in Utah or whatever, Miami for that matter. We wanted a proven business model. And 100% of the time we told people that we don't want your name. We already got the name. We want your business model and your process and systems, So they were like, yeah, let's do this. I'm excited. This sounds like an awesome idea. I've been thinking about it myself. Oh, by the way, nobody's going to work for you because the color pink. They're just not going to do it. I know these guys. I know the moving industry. And 100% of the time, every one of those opportunities died because people could not get their head around the idea of rebranding Pink Zebra Moving, which is funny because now that we're in the industry, guys love it. They love wearing the shirts. They love doing all the silly antics that we do. They have zero problems with the color pink. No one's ever said, not doing this. But all the other guys thought they were going to be a huge problem for us.
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny. Well, you'd mentioned it's a male-dominated industry, but it makes me want to talk about this topic with you, Ron, because I think one of your superpowers is the ability to see an opportunity, like a gap in the market, and also to differentiate yourself. Because, you could go in and be any other moving company, have a couple of muscle guys on a billboard, and people be like, oh, good, they're strong, they can pick up my heavy boxes. But that's you're trying to get inside a different part of the psyche of the consumer experience here. Let's talk about differentiation a little bit. And as a new brand, it's so hard to do this sometimes. And some of the brands I work with have had to completely redesign themselves because they realized that they didn't have a brand that was ready to be different anywhere in the marketplace. So it'd be harder to compete. Let's talk about, so you talked about the color pink. Can I ask you, and I'm not sure if you looked into this or not, who makes the majority of the buying decisions for who's going to move a house?
Well, it's surprising to me, but it's the female. It's usually the wife, the female partner in the home. Not that it's 100% of the time, obviously, but most of the time it's the mom.
Yeah, that's what I would suspect. I didn't even know that, but I was guessing you'd done the research into that.
Yeah.
Knowing you.
We thought it would go the other direction. We saw obviously the same person making that decision at Two Maids. That made sense, to us, but it's surprising to us that it's the same thing here.
Well, I looked, I can't remember the number now. I was looking into this for the automotive industry, but I want to say it's like 65 or 70% of all automotive decisions are made by the woman in a relationship. And so I don't think this would be any different because this is not meant to be disrespectful in any way, but women tend to like rule the roofs, right? They're in charge of most of the decisions in the household, whether they're working or not. Even if they are working, they're still the ones that decide what are we going to eat for supper a lot more than the guys do. And so if you're going to move across the country, across the city, I would be shocked if it wasn't primarily dominated by a woman making that decision, or at least driving the decision with inputs, right?
Sure.
So, yes,
that's the domestic boss for sure.
Yeah, it is. And you and I have both been married for a while, 13 years for you, 20 for me, coming up in about a week and a day, but who's counting? The reality though is that your brand appeals more, I think, to that audience. Not just because of the color pink, but the way that you've made the brand less testosterone driven. I really think that's cool. How are you seeing that differentiation using the color pink, using a little bit more of a fun brand? Can you walk us through kind of the psychology behind how you came up with that, and then tell us about the impact?
Yeah, every day I hear a story from across the network where someone says, "Hey, they hired us because of our name. They hired us because of our color. They hired us because of what they saw online." All the things that are a little different. Our sales pitch wasn't really that powerful. It was all the other secondary things. Mm-hmm. So yeah, why Pink Zebra Moving? It's part of this is cerebral, part of it is more emotional. I'll tell you the cerebral part. I'm a huge fan of a guy named Seth Godin. Seth Godin wrote plenty of books.
The Idea Virus. Oh yeah.
Yeah, the one I'm probably more obsessed with over the years is called The Purple Cow. It's one of his first books. More of a marketing book than a business book, but it's just what you would think. If you drive through this pasture of cows in rural America and see the cows, you see them and keep driving, right? It's not that big of a deal. But if one of those cows was purple, then more than likely, years from now, even 20 years from now, you would remember the time, everything about the situation because of how different that cow was. And so it's a simple concept, makes a whole lot of sense, right? But very few businesses, even today, even though the book is probably 20 years old now, very few businesses still really understand that. People think hard work is necessary, sure. People think capital is necessary. Obviously, it is as well. But you got to be different. You have to be different. And if you're not different at some point, someone's going to outwork you and outspend you. So you might as well try to figure out a way to offer something different to not just your customers, but even your employees. And so that book, The Purple Cow, has served as sort of a baseline for me for a long, long time, both the Two Maids and now here. And so part of this is sort of a riff on that to say, hey, this is sort of a homage to my guy Seth. And, that's the more cerebral side of how we kind of came to this place. The other is, we own the color pink prior to this. Every franchise circle we walk into, we wear a pink jacket, and people call us the pink jacket guys usually. And so I was already known as the pink jacket guy, so I figured I wanted to stick with that. The other was more fun. You talk about my wife. We had a 10-year anniversary down. This, we love the Keys. We were down in the Keys, just the two of us. And we were underneath a bridge called 7 Mile Bridge, 7 miles long, believe it or not. And that's where the Gulf of Mexico meets the Atlantic Ocean. And we were underneath that for hours and never really paid attention to cars and trucks on the bridge because you're in this paradise, right? And so we're on this boat, just kind of hanging out. And for whatever reason, something caught my eye, and it was a black and white zebra patterned moving truck. And again, probably hundreds, if not thousands of cars had passed us that day and never once noticed it. But that caught my eye. I'd already said, hey, I'm going to enter this industry. And I didn't really know how we were going to brand it. I knew I wanted to own the color pink. And when I saw that truck, I don't know where that truck was headed or what the name of that business was, but I said, zebra, that's it. So Pink Zebra Movement was born at the intersection of the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic Ocean.
That's a great example of a little bit of serendipity, right? Or call it inspiration, depends on how you want to flavor that. I tend to believe in the latter more than the former, but
sure.
But I think that you're hitting on some key points here, which are one, it's emotional and inspiring, right? When you do something unique like that, and you mentioned there's the cerebral side, and this is the emotional side. Let's dive deeper into that. So yeah, a zebra stripe moving van, very different, right? Very different. But a pink zebra stripe moving van, even more different, right? So it really stands out with the branding. What are the emotional aspects to this business that you're trying to kind of play to make it a successful brand?
Yeah. So when I don't know if you've ever hired a moving company or anyone listening has. Most people have, and most people hated it, regretted it, wanted it just to get over with and then write a fat check. It's just this painful experience that everyone for 20, 30, and even 50 plus years has had to go through when they make this big move. It's far from anything close to fun. It's the opposite of fun. So we challenged ourselves to make moving fun. And so we do that by using fun emotions. We call ourselves the first happy moving company. That particular emotion is just an easy one for us to use. But at the end of the day, what we're really trying to do is just bring ourselves closer to our customer. We want to engage with them. We want to build a relationship with them. If you could think about your own personal world, when you make a mistake with your wife, it sounds like you guys have been around the block for a couple of decades now, more than likely, if you're like me, you've made a mistake or two. And when you make that small mistake, obviously, like if you forget something at the grocery store, for instance, I'm assuming she doesn't threaten divorce that afternoon because you guys are married, you have a bond, you have a relationship, there's trust there, even though you screwed up. If you hired a stranger off the street to say, hey, I'm busy today, but I'm going to need you to bring that spice home from the grocery store this afternoon by 5 o'clock, and that stranger didn't do what they were supposed to do, that would be a transaction that they failed on, and you would never work with that spice deliverer again, right? Because again, there's no relationship. So we feel like that same phenomenon occurs in the moving industry. People hire moving companies, pay them a bunch of money. There's a transaction that occurs, but they're strangers. And so something goes wrong, they're in deep trouble. If we can build a relationship with our customers, we're not hoping we make mistakes, but in the event we do make a mistake because we're humans, we're able to overcome those because we have such a bond now with our customers. And again, we use the fun emotion, the happy emotions to do that. We do jumping jacks. We have crazy looking trucks. We have a mascot called Zeke the Zebra who shows up. We leave behind surprise boxes filled with goodies. We feed people the night before they're moved for free. We do all sorts of fun, surprising things throughout that. We literally put on a show. That's fun to us, but at the end of the day, it's more not the fun that we're selling. It's the relationship we're trying to build.
Yeah, no, I love it. I've seen your not YouTube, but your LinkedIn videos about Zeke showing up, and I can imagine, especially families that have kids, like that's a game-changing experience, right? Like the kids are all of a sudden they don't want to move, they don't want to leave their house, and all of a sudden you've given them a great experience that's memorable.
But it's funny. Mom and dad they like Zeke too. We've had more adult selfies with Zeke than kids.
Yeah, I'll bet. What I find interesting about what you're describing here too is a transactional industry. How often do people move and need a moving van? If you're in the Army, military, a couple times in your career if it's short, but 10 times if you retire in the military. What people forget is lifetime value of customers a lot, and it's like roofers. The roofing industry has the worst reputation across all industries and home services by a landslide. It's bad news. And so in the moving industry though too, like it's not an industry with like massively positive customer reviews. So it's not when we think, oh, that's my brand. I work with this moving company. I think we used ABT once. I don't even remember. They were the green ones where you like wall off a section of your semi, and it wasn't a good experience, and it was really just an inexpensive option when we bought. And so we were just trying to get it done. We didn't even care. But
Yeah.
we've moved 4 times since we rented that space. I hope to never move again, but
You
still.
know, you don't have to use their names here, but I'll give you a personal challenge here because I bet I'll win this side of the bet. So you've hired 4 different moving companies, it sounds like.
Actually, we've moved ourselves a couple of times since then. Yeah, we have teenage. It's a pain in the butt, which is why I never
Yeah.
want to move again.
So normally, when I ask that question, if you've actually hired a moving company, the average ticket for most moving companies is anywhere from two to potentially even more than $10,000. But it's a serious investment, even in an inflationary environment like we live in.
Yeah.
Yet years later, when you look back on that experience, you don't even remember the name of the company. Like you imagine in any other world where you go spend two, three, four, $5,000+ with someone and not even remembering who you gave that money to. But that happens because it's such a faceless transaction inside this industry.
Yeah. And so when I'm going to make my next move, right, you're really building the rapport because the lifetime value of that customer is a lot more than the transaction. And I think that's a key differentiator for you and why you've invested in this space in the way that you are with the different moving vans, the different experience, sending them dinner the night before. Well, that eats into your margin, no pun intended, on a deal. And yet, why are you doing it?
We do, yeah. So again, when you think about this industry, most people think there's no such thing as recurring revenue. You know, everybody moves every 6 years or whatever the number is, and that means every 6 years you get to serve that customer again. All that's true, but most people who hire a moving company, not everyone, but most people who hire a moving company are referred to them from someone. Usually that referral source is a storage facility manager or owner, property manager, could be a realtor. All of those folks are referring us every single day across all of our locations right now. And those folks are going to refer somebody again to us 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks from now. So while we don't have the traditional definition of recurring revenue inside our business model, we still have a component that exists. And so we work hard to create this great experience for our customers, but we also do the same thing for the referring source. We want to make their life better too. We want to make the referring action fun, so we engage with them just as much as we engage with our customers. It always surprises them. They can't believe it. But we're not doing it just for monetary reasons. Obviously, we get some results from that. We enjoy it. This is act 2 for me. And as much as I want to grow and build this brand and have 100+ locations like we did before, and be this national brand with recognition left and right, all those things so exciting and fun. But I've lived that life already. That challenge is fun, but it's not nearly as exciting to me as disrupting an industry and really being known as a pioneer that changed everything about the industry. And that's what I want my legacy to be, not the 100 locations and money and all those other things that come from growth. It's what happens to this industry after we've done our thing here.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love it. Just a personal anecdote. I'm in the technology space, right? Like we do sales automation, CRMs. That's how you and I got to know each other. But it's an industry that needs some disruption. It's an industry that needs people to do things differently. And the way you treat people, the experiences you give them. I find we talk about reputation over revenue and people over profits. And to be really frank with you, those pay way better dividends than the way the rest of the industry works. And plus, I like it. I wake up in the morning, I don't say, "Oh my gosh, another day at client tether." I think, "Oh, I'm going to go and change." I've looked at my calendar. I got 5 people. I'm going to probably change their lives today in a meaningful way, and they're going to work with my team and get the support that they've never gotten working with technology before. And we're going to have somebody, they can call a cell phone and get an answer to a question, right? Like that is not how this industry works because it costs money, right? So everyone's pinching pennies and investors run this world. And we're like, nope, we're going to be different. And nobody can keep up with that.
I agree. I will attest that's what you call you guys, you answer, and personalized service. You got a great product, great team.
Oh, well, that's kind of you say, Ron. I wasn't fishing for a compliment there, but
it's true though. Yeah, it's true. been a great partner at both brands.
Yeah, well, thanks, man. And but this is what you guys are trying to create. And we chatted about this before we started recording, but the hardest thing to replicate and compete with is an experience that's materially different. Because these other brands, they're not going to go repaint all their trucks. They're not going to retool their entire back office support team. So I mean, they're just going to keep doing it the way they do it. There's enough out there. They'll be successful. But
I'll give you a perfect example. One of our trademarks in terms of our service offering is a free meal the night before. We always surprise people with it. We don't really throw it around during our sales pitches or even on our websites. We talk about it. If you know someone that's hired us, they talk about it. So every now and then somebody calls and says, "Hey, where's my food?" You know, it's kind of weird because we're a moving company. But it's we're not inventing something new here. Here's food. We pay for it. It's not that hard to replicate. At some point, maybe someone will, yet no one has so far. When that day comes, that doesn't mean you've copied Pink Zebra Moving. That's just right now a trademark for us, but it's a small part of who we are. And it's honestly just the start of who we are. And so that's what I think is what really will separate us from our competition. As soon as people start catching on to what we're doing and start chasing us, and their first thing they're going to say is, "Well, we'll start feeding people too." They're going to realize real quickly that it's bigger than the food. The food's not even important. It's what we're doing on top of everything else. The food's just a part of that process.
Yeah. Yeah. And at that point, when there's some brand recognition, it feels like a cheap substitute and it turns people off. Honestly, they're like, "Oh, you're just trying to do what those guys are doing." I've had that experience before with other brands like, "Nah, I know whose shtick that was, and it's not yours, but sure, give me free pizza." But yeah, I think that's a really good way to look at it. As long term, it's not about the food. It's not about any one tactic. It's about the whole experience you guys are managing.
Yeah, but we try to stay away from pizza. If you want pizza, we'll send you pizza. But we've got some real fun options for you. Some sushi to, some real healthy options too. So.
Yeah, that's a much better move. Yeah,
yeah,
because everybody else who does it's going to order pizza because it's cheap and easy, right? Yeah. Well, talk to me about this. So deployment, and maybe we'll wrap on this thought today. You guys have had the opportunity to grow pretty fast, and yet you'd mentioned to me like, well, but we're slowing down our growth a little. We don't want to sell too many units. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Like, this experience of growing and having a really exciting brand and having a lot of people who want to buy, but then being able to say, "No, we want to slow this whole process down." A lot of people say, "You're crazy, Ron. Like, there's so much money to be had. You could be 100 units in 3 years." Can you maybe walk through that experience and what led you to feel like, "Hey, let's pump the brakes a little and slow down growth"?
Yeah, we could have 100 units in less than 3 years if we wanted it. We started franchising in April of last year in 22, and within 8 or 9, maybe 10 weeks, two and a half months, we'd already closed 9 deals, 30 territories. We were off to a fantastic start. Still doing great now. And then all the openings started happening, and I, as the founder and leader of the brand, had to consider adding new talent to our organization here, and that's fine. That's what happens when a business grows. But I was hiring people real quickly, and on top of that, we were making quick decisions on our franchise candidates that, after they were in the pipeline, we were wondering, were those the right folks or not? And so we said to ourselves, like, maybe we should think differently about growth, and let's really nail down the avatar that we want to join this organization right now. And 10 months from now or whatever, it may be a little bit different because the personality, the type of avatar we're looking for may actually change. But right now, we need a hard charger that really wants to dedicate a lot of their time to this business. What we do from an experience level for our customers, and again, for their employees, is unique and different, and it requires a certain type of culture that a leader has to take charge and run with. And so we can't just find someone that has capital that wants to earn some side income and call that a franchise partner right now. And so we had to make an internal decision what to do. Do we want to just go big fast? Because the market was telling us they would go fast with us if we wanted to. Or do we really want to do what we said we were going to do, which is change this industry by providing an unbelievable service that's unmatched, in this industry ever. And so that's the route we chose. It won't always be that route. We know that maybe you can't always just hit the on button and just take off like we did last year. but we feel like we've got a profitable business model that's scalable, strong vendor relations, strong technology, an untapped industry with a unique way of serving the market. We feel like that is unique by itself when you package all that together. And when we hit that on button, the industry or the market will react to that and grow just as fast as they did a year ago. So we probably want to be somewhere between 5 to 10 new locations per year. That's our wheelhouse today. But I'm thinking that at some point in the next couple of years, we'll probably go back to the high-flying days, because we were off to a start. It probably would have taken us to 100 units in 2 years. But we made an internal decision again to go a different direction.
Yeah, and I want to pause here for a second. Something you can't say that I want to say, which is, if I were looking to buy a franchise today, and I am actually, but probably not moving right now, because
we've got it. We're one of our next locations is going to be in Provo.
Oh, son of a, that would be my market. Oh well. So I guess I'll have to buy a different market if I look at a pink zebra. But if you're savvy as a franchise buyer, you want to look for somebody who is extremely invested in your growth and success. And when you're buying the 180th unit of some franchise system, they have coaches and mentors that will make sure you follow the program. Those often become audit centric rather than performance centric cultures. And what you're saying here is, we are so invested in the success of each unit, we're slowing down growth, which is meaning not taking on the capital of the franchise fees, right? Which for a lot of emerging brands is a terrifying decision to make, because no, we want money, but you're saying, no, forget the money stuff. We want to make sure the units and our franchise owners are successful, because that creates a very successful item 19. It shows the world, when they're looking at your brand, that you're successful and you're outperforming peers. That's what's more important to you than the flashiness of getting to 100 units in 3 years. And then, frankly, what happens to most people that do that is they can't keep up with the growth. So they have 50% of those units are in resale status, and they're not deployed.
Right.
3 to 5 years.
We're in a unique position, a great position, coming off the transaction, selling Two Maids, provided me and the business with a different type of platform. We don't have to just sell to pay the bills. We don't have to sell to win the press release. We're opening strategically, and we want people who want to be a part of this. We want passion to ooze out of every one of our early franchisees, so that later on they become the forefathers for this brand. And when a franchisee number 50 calls and says, "Hey, franchisee number 2, what do you think?" And they say all the things I'm saying, it's great, it's amazing, it's changed my life. We having a blast changing this industry. We're the number 1 moving company in this area, and on top of that, we're the happy moving company. So I want all of that being shared with future franchisees later on. And so if we bring in someone that's ready to just be sort of a rule following soldier, we're not quite there right now. We need entrepreneurial, high charging personalities that test our limits. And so that's not for everybody. That probably is atypical, in fact, of a lot of franchise brands, but that's who we want right now. We're finding those folks, but they're definitely harder to find than the traditional franchise owner.
Yeah, but I also really respect that, and I think anyone listening should take note, especially emerging brands. You've got to, when I coaching baseball, especially infield drills, even outfield, we would tell people, slow is smooth and smooth is fast, right? And so you guys are trying to get to that smooth state, so then everyone who comes on is very quickly picking up and succeeding as they go. And as an emerging brand, you've got to do it.
I agree. Yeah, it's 2 different worldviews. I can appreciate and understand and definitely respect the position most emerging franchise brands are in. There's very little royalty revenue early on. So those new franchise deals are income generators for you. So I understand some tough decisions have to be made. Thankfully, we're not there. This is round 2 for us, so we can think a little differently. Yeah,
makes you more strategic. Well, Ron, this has been fantastic. Just a couple of summary points. And Seth Godin was a great go-to. I think it's the title of a book, but if not, it's a great title of a book that should be written. It's Differentiate or Die: I'm pretty sure that's a book that I've read at least the synopsis of in the past, but
Like,
you've got to be different, right? But different in a meaningful way. Don't just paint your vehicle green and say, hey, we're different now. But actually the experience, differentiating at an experience level is optimal. And then final thought for me, and then I'll ask you for maybe a wrap-up thought is and also having a solid deployment strategy that's based upon unit level success and not necessarily top line income from franchise sales. That makes a world of difference that will ripple through the generations of your business if you do it right at the very beginning.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Talking to the choir here.
Yeah, I know. And Ron, tell me, is any other parting thoughts, things that, speaking to an emerging or growing brand, what are some lessons, something else that you'd want them to take away from this interview with you?
Yeah, so literally every week, sometimes every day, I get a call or LinkedIn request. Someone wants to learn how to franchise their business. Maybe I need to be a franchise consultant next, but sometimes I give them my time. Most of the time I just don't have the time to do it. But in all cases, not all, but the majority of those folks really have forgotten what that, or not forgotten, but just don't really understand what that means. And so most people think I've got this cool brand name, I own the trademark, I'm dominating my market, I can do this everywhere. And so then the first question I ask is it scalable? And they're like, yes, it's absolutely scalable. And I say, prove it. And they're like, what are you talking about? This is how we do it. I was like, what do you have that documented? Where's the system? Where's the process for lead gen, for lead conversion, for customer retention? Where are all these processes? And they're like, oh, right here. They're right here. And so if you're an emerging franchise brand or even have an opportunity or you're looking to franchise later on, you got to have a scalable, profitable business model that knows how to generate revenue. That's a big deal. You got to figure out how to make that stuff easy. Once you have that, then you've got to have everything documented. And that is a huge task. It took, for the better part of a year, that's what I spent between selling Two Maids and just really refocusing on Pink Zebra Moving. We ran a local moving business here in our headquarters in Birmingham. But while that was operating, I was literally building all those systems and one by one, sentence by sentence. And so it was fun for me. It may sound horrible for someone else, but for me, it was really fun.
Yeah.
There are plenty of people that do that for a living, I'm sure, but for me, I chose to do it myself. Same thing I did at Two Maids. So we have that, and that's what I think everyone will eventually need. If you think you have a brand or an idea that can be scaled through the franchising industry, you got to be able to figure out a way to generate revenue easy. You got to figure out a way to make money easy, and you got to prove it. That's the 3 steps in a nutshell.
Yeah, I love it. Well, in documentation, that's like the bane of my existence. I hate documentation, but it's true. When they create scalability and consistency, right? That's what you're trying to produce is consistent results in different markets. And you can't do that unless you have a consistently and well documented process. So
Yep.
Ron, what's the best way if people want to reach out to you and connect? LinkedIn, or what would you recommend people do to
LinkedIn is always an easy way. My name's 2 syllables, Ron Holt, so it's easy to find me. pinkzebramoving.com if you're a potential customer that wants to get in on an act and see how we make moving fun. If you're interested in the franchise opportunity, we want to talk to you. It's pinkzebramovingfranchise.com. Either one, you can find us. But yeah, if you just want to talk to me personally and talk a little shop about this industry, I'm a nerd when it comes to all things business and entrepreneurship. So fire away. We'll connect and talk.
Yeah, well, I sure appreciate that, Ron. Thanks again for your time today, and best of luck as you keep growing Pink Zebra.
Same to you, Dave. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.